This is Letter from America. Today's topic is ZANU PF. The police and the army have contributed to nearly all human rights violations in Zimbabwe, according to a report of the Zimbabwe Peace Project. The continued denial of bail for the CCC Deputy National Chairman Job Sikala, the cat and mouse game by ZANU PF in trying to block CCC leader Nelson Chamisa from addressing a rally in Gokwe all point to a country whose citizens have been violently deprived of their human rights. The position of ZANU PF on Job Sikala has been spelled out by the party's Deputy Director of Information, Tafadzwa Mugwadi. He recently said the ZANU PF plan is to keep Sikala in jail until after the 2023 elections. This is a classic case of state capture by ZANU PF. The judiciary are strictly prohibited from granting Sikala bail, no matter how compelling his application for bail is. It goes without saying that things are falling apart in Zimbabwe. The law of the partisan jungle now rules the country. A leading human rights organization, the Zimbabwe Peace Project, issues monthly reports on human rights violations in the country. According to the Zimbabwe Peace Project report for June, ZANU PF was the leading human rights violator in the country. ZANU PF, the police, and the army jointly accounted for nearly 90% of all human rights violations in the country. The Zimbabwe Peace Project notes that for ZANU PF, it is all about its escalating for domination ahead of the 2023 elections. Since April, ZANU PF has launched a systematic campaign to threaten and intimidate opposition supporters, especially in rural areas. ZANU PF has, since April, again launched this campaign to intimidate, threaten opposition supporters in rural areas, such that by the time the official campaign period begins for 2023 elections, villagers would have lost the little that remains of their voice and a chance to choose leaders of their choice. On the Zimbabwe police, it is so much about the police continued use of archaic and selective methods of law enforcement. The Zimbabwe police continues to be an enforcer for ZANU PF, ready to arrest those who do not agree with the ruling party, and prepared to look away when the ruling party is on the wrong side, when the ruling party goes on an orgy of violence. The CCC, which has remained on the receiving end of violence, with 196 of its members being victims in July only, also contributed to minor human rights violations as internal fights surfaced in the party formed just in January this year. The Zimbabwe Peace Project continues to express concern over the 31 cases of politicization of food and other aid and 138 cases of harassment and intimidation, as well as the 18 cases of unlawful detention and 42 assaults that were recorded. This points to a situation where Zimbabweans have become more and more vulnerable to human rights violations without any form of protection or any source of recourse, and law enforcement agents continue to prove to be either incapacitated, partisan, or unaware of their mandate to protect all Zimbabweans. During the month of July, the government of Zimbabwe revealed more and more its unwillingness to unite the country as the levels of intolerance and selective and partisan application of the law continued unabated. The Zimbabwe Peace Project's report notes that the highlight of the month was a video that went viral on the internet about Upton Mashayanyika, an apostolic church bishop who told ZANU PF supporters at a rally in Mberengwa that advocate Nelson Chamisa and his family must be killed. He said this as he explained the meaning of the "down with the so and so" slogan. He said whenever this slogan was used against anyone, it meant that that person had to die. He then chanted "down with the Chamisa" as someone in the crowd chipped in, "and his children." Just when one expected the law to take its course by arresting Mashayanyika, nothing happened. The Zimbabwe Peace Project reported that it was only after renowned human rights lawyer Beatrice Mtetwa wrote a letter demanding that the law enforcement agents investigate the bishop that the police responded by saying they had launched an investigation into the matter. But nothing has happened to date. To this day, Mashayanyika, who is a well-known individual, is yet to be arrested despite the overwhelming evidence. One just imagines what would have happened if such a slogan and his explanations was chanted by a member of the main opposition, CCC. According to the Zimbabwe Peace Project, this is happening at a time when opposition leaders and activists and human and workers' rights defenders are being persecuted and detained simply because they speak out against government and the ruling party excesses. The Zimbabwe Peace Project continues. The president of the Amalgamated Rural Teachers Union of Zimbabwe, Obert Masaraure, has been in remand prison for more than a month on a charge of obstruction of justice. It is the state case that he committed the crime when he tweeted about the situation of one of his colleagues who had been arrested. This after Masaraure had been granted bail on another case in which he is accused of murder. Ironically, this is a case from 2016 when a colleague of his fell to his death, after which an inquest into the death pronounced there was no foul play. The Zimbabwe Peace Project also reports that CCC legislators Job Sikala, Godfrey Sitole, and 11 other activists have remained incarcerated, charged with inciting violence and obstructing the course of law since early June, when there were violent skirmishes in Nyatsime following the disappearance and the callous murder of Mo Blessing Ali, a well-known CCC activist in Nyatsime. In other disturbing reports, the director of the Center for Natural Resource Governance, Farai Maguwu, received death threats from ZANU PF Chegutu West legislator Dexter Nduna on Twitter following the publication of a report titled "Zimbabwe's Disappearing Gold Case of Mazoe and Peñalonga." In the report, Maguwu details illicit financial flows, zooming in on leakages of some 3 tons of gold valued at $100 million a month, or $1.9 billion per year. Speaking to the Zimbabwe Peace Project about the threats, I was taken aback and surprised that someone would make death threats like that on Twitter. When it comes to issues of natural resources, we will not be intimidated, said Maguwu. Opposition Zimbabwe Transformative Party leader Parere Kanyenzura was also arrested during a prayer walk activity. All this is happening as ZANU PF has accelerated its crackdown on opposition supporters in rural areas and targeting CSO leaders nationwide. A few examples include, but are not limited to, the following. In Bikita South, one Masakadze, a Ward 2 councillor and a teacher at Zindowe Primary School, forced people to attend ZANU PF meetings in the area and said that if people did not vote for ZANU PF, the party was going to unleash violence. In Cholocho South, it was reported ZANU PF Vice President Kembo Mohadi met village heads and told them that in addition to voting for ZANU PF in the 2023 elections, they were supposed to use their influence to close the operating space for opposition parties when the campaigns officially start. You are supposed to work to ensure that no one in the opposition gets a chance to campaign in this area, Mohadi had told the villagers. The Zimbabwe Peace Project also reports that on July 23, at Rukau Business Center Ward 16 in Mutoko East, ZANU PF supporters attacked the CCC activists who had gathered for their planning meeting for the memorial service of their late CCC colleague. A mob of ZANU activists came from nowhere and started beating up people who were attending a CCC meeting, leaving 3 injured and hospitalized at All Souls Mission Hospital. No arrests were made despite the cases being reported to the police and the names of attackers being known. A chief councillor, Tafadzwa Mukandi, declared that if we see that you have gone against the ideologies of the ZANU party, we will definitely come for you. This party is the very party that enhanced the land reform, Mukandi said, from which you have benefited. When we then see that you are working against the gains of the liberation struggle, we will not tolerate that and we will definitely come for you. Some people died for this country, yet you want us to tolerate sellouts. That was ZANU councillor Tafadzwa Mukandi threatening, intimidating villagers. The Zimbabwe Peace Project, in its analysis of the situation of violence in Zimbabwe, reports that the ruling party, that is ZANU PF, which has effectively erased the state party divide, has become so intolerant to opposition views that as of the 2023 elections approach, the contempt for any opposition or dissent has now become so acute that it is bordering on hatred. The Zimbabwe Peace Project reports that the ruling party functionaries at all levels have continued to publicly state that the ZANU PF and state security agents are prepared to launch an all-out war against civil rights activists and opposition political players, and this is a sure sign that the country's 2023 elections are set to have a premeditated outcome in favor of the ruling party. What is so very disconcerting is that the country's police appear utterly oblivious to the threat to peace, harmony, and unity the utterances by those in ZANU PF are posing. To the ruling party, anyone who does not agree is a sellout. There are no gray areas, the Zimbabwe Peace Project reports. It is such language that is so dangerous that if untamed can lead to the country degenerating into chaos and violence, and the ruling party should set itself back to the ethos of democracy, tolerance and good governance. The Zimbabwe Peace Project makes the following recommendations. It is high time President Emmerson Mnangagwa, who has promised and so far has failed to deliver a democratic, economically prosperous Zimbabwe, pressed the reset button and worked towards ensuring that Zimbabweans can enjoy the freedoms that are guaranteed in the Constitution. It is not a favor, but a constitutional obligation for the government to create an environment of freedom, and by acceding to stand as the president of Zimbabwe, Mnangagwa signed a contract with the people of Zimbabwe that he was going to abide by the constitution, and he should simply just do so. The message to Mnangagwa is, do your job. This is part of the Zimbabwe Project campaign to have the citizens to resist, reject, and report violence ahead of the 2023 elections. This campaign is called the RRV 2023. The campaign RRV 2023 is specifically designed as an early warning system of political violence, with the view that the relevant agents can adopt preventive measures. This is because the Zimbabwe Peace Project has noted how community members are used to mete out violence against each other, and the moment they unite against violence, peaceful contestation is likely to prevail. So the RRV 2023 campaign separates politically motivated human rights violations from all other forms of violence, and using a highly sophisticated data analysis tool, the Zimbabwe Project maps the severity of the violations to give an indication of the political volatility of each province. At the end of the day, Zimbabweans will have to deal with this monster called ZANU PF. Zimbabweans must now stand up against politically motivated violence. Yes, Zimbabwe have the power in numbers. There are 15 million Zimbabweans. Civil rights activist Makomborero Haroziwishe, who was jailed for more than 1 year on trumped-up charges, had this message to the Zimbabweans. We are the people that we have been waiting for. We are many. They are few.
This concludes today's broadcast of Letter from America, a weekly in-depth analysis of the situation in Zimbabwe. Thank you for listening. This concludes today's broadcast of Letter from America, a weekly in-depth analysis of the situation in Zimbabwe. Thank you for listening. This concludes today's broadcast of Letter from America, a weekly in-depth analysis of the situation in Zimbabwe. Thank you for listening. This concludes today's broadcast of Letter from America, a weekly in-depth analysis of the situation in Zimbabwe.